We are live, ma'am.
Namaskar. A very good evening to our distinguished guests, my senior colleagues, and dear students. I am Trupti Panigrahi, Assistant Lecturer and Assistant Dean, Jindal Global Law School, and I'm honored to be here to welcome you all for the grand launch of three brand new undergrad programs that are going to be launched today at our school. OP Jindal Global University, as we see today, is because of its ethos and remarkable vision and mission of Professor Dr. C. Rajkumar. The journey, ever since 2009, has in itself been a motivational and encouraging one. It is my proud privilege to invite Professor Dr. C. Rajkumar, Honorable Founding Vice Chancellor of OP Jindal Global University and Dean of the Jindal Global Law School, to deliver the welcome address and introduce our guest speakers for today. Professor, may I request you to deliver the address?
Thank you, Tripti. First of all, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all our distinguished guests and participants and speakers and others who are viewing this program. Good evening to all of you who are watching this from India. Good morning to our friends in the United States, and maybe good afternoon from our friends in Europe as well, some of whom have tuned in to watch this program. It's a very special day indeed as we launch three new undergraduate degree programs at Jindal Global Law School: the BA Honors in Gender Studies, the BA Honors in Criminology and Criminal Justice, and the BA Honors in Human Rights. We are also very fortunate to have with us three distinguished scholars and the practitioners who have made significant contributions in their respective fields, who have agreed to be part of the session. Professor Seetal Kalantri, Professor of Law at the School of Law, Seattle University in the United States; Professor Dr. Sheetal Ranjan, Professor and Graduate Director, Department of Sociology and Criminal Justice at the William Patterson University in the United States; Ms. Sushma Raman, Executive Director of the Carr Center for Human Rights Policy at the Harvard Kennedy School at the Harvard University, United States. Three of them are joining from three different cities: in Seattle, in New Jersey, as well as in Boston. Along with them, we have our own wonderful colleagues, Professor Srijit joining us from Kerala, the Executive Dean of Jindal Global Law School; Professor Deepika Jain, the Vice Dean of Research at Jindal Global Law School; Professor Anand Prakash Mishra, the Associate Dean and Director of Law School Admissions; and of course, Tripti, who's joining us here. I want to take a moment to reflect on this extraordinary journey that we have undertaken, and the fact that these three programs are being launched simply a few days before the 12th anniversary of OP Jindal Global University and Jindal Global Law School has a very special meaning. As some of you know, on 30th September 2009, we began the first academic session of the first school of the university, Jindal Global Law School, and indeed the OP Jindal Global University, in a very modest manner, with little over 100 students, 10 full-time faculty members, and nearly 20 administrative staff, barely 4 classrooms, and a conference room that hosted my office and the office of the registrar and the 10 faculty members and the 20 admin staff, all of whom in one office. With that modest origins, we have grown significantly in the last 12 years. We have moved from one school to 12 schools, from say 100 students to nearly 8,500 students, from 10 full-time faculty members to nearly 1,000 full-time faculty members. This journey has been quite remarkable, and we are very fortunate that a number of individuals have contributed quite significantly to this journey. And I want to particularly mention Professor Seetal Kalantri, who has been part of this journey from day one. And I'm grateful that she has agreed to be part of this launch. I'm also grateful to our other two colleagues and friends who have agreed to be here. I'm conscious of the time, and so I want to quickly mention why we are doing what we are doing today. The landscape of Indian legal education has dramatically transformed in the last 75 years. As we celebrate the 75th year of Indian independence, we also recognize the modest origins of the Indian higher education system. At the dawn of independence in 1947, India had only 20 universities, and today we have over 1,000 universities. We have nearly 1,650 law schools spread across the country. But one of the major challenges of Indian legal education, and arguably legal education in different parts of the world, is the fact that they have been far too myopic in their vision and their imagination. The fact that legal education has focused far too much on law and law alone, with significant neglect towards the broader understanding of liberal arts, humanities, and social sciences, has been a great source of concern for many of us at Jindal Global Law School. Secondly, I must mention that the generation of young graduates in law, young law students, are increasingly studying law in complete isolation of the social context in which law and legal institutions function. It is also true that law and law legal studies is becoming increasingly dogmatic, with little reference to the larger context in which legal education ought to be pursued. This particular challenge that legal education is facing in India and maybe in other parts of the world needs to be addressed in numerous ways. One of the ways by which it can be addressed is to develop strong sense of interdisciplinarity deeply woven into the legal education, including its curriculum, its core structure, its program, its pedagogy, and indeed the research ecosystem that the law school provides. And that has been the method adopted by many progressive law schools in India and around the world. But even then, it is a limiting factor because those who end up coming into law school are increasingly focusing on law and law alone, in complete neglect of the broader aspects of humanities and social sciences. It is in this context that Jindal Global Law School took, in my view, a radical decision, in many ways reimagining the future of legal education. It is rare in the history of legal education, not just in India, but anywhere in the world, for a law school to end up launching programs that were hitherto focused on other schools and other departments. We are very delighted that we are launching today 3 unique interdisciplinary programs: the BA Honors in Gender Studies, the BA Honors in Criminology and Criminal Justice, and the BA Honors in Human Rights. I strongly believe that these 3 degree programs indeed will have a lot of reference points and also connections and linkages, both in terms of its theory and its imagination towards law. And I'm sure legal education also will be shaped by some of the understandings that we have with regard to these disciplinary areas. But the fact that there will be a new generation of young people who will end up pursuing these 3 undergraduate programs with specialization in them, and also maybe considered pursuing law later if they choose to, is part of the vision of Jindal Global Law School. I have long maintained that law is the new liberal arts, law is the new humanities, law is the new social sciences. To advance that vision of law is the new liberal arts, law is the new humanities, law is the new social sciences, these 3 programs epitomizes the future of legal education, and we are very fortunate that we are able to do this today. With those words, let me quickly introduce my dear friends and distinguished colleagues. Professor Seetal Kalantri is an expert in comparative law, business and human rights, feminist legal theory, and contract law. Her book, Women's Rights and Migration, explores the consequences of the use of acontextual information to develop laws relating to reproduction in the United States. She has written over a dozen articles and book chapters that have been published in major legal journals such as the Cornell Law Review and the Stanford International Law Journal, as well as peer-reviewed social sciences journals, including the Forum for Health Economics and Policy. Her work has also appeared in the New York Times, Slate, and The Hill, among others. She is a regular media commentator on reproductive rights, law in India, and human rights issues. Her writings has been cited by the US Supreme Court and the Indian Supreme Court. In addition, she founded the Cornell International Human Rights Clinic, the University of Chicago International Human Rights Clinic, the Avon Global Center for Human Rights and Justice at the Cornell Law School, the Cornell India Law Center, and the India Center for Law and Justice at the Seattle University School of Law. She's a founding faculty director of an online master's in legal studies program at Cornell Law School. In that role, she recently designed the curriculum, recruited tenured and adjunct faculty to teach courses, created admissions criteria, and coordinated with instructional designers and other administrators for this new master's program at Cornell Law School. More importantly and more personally, Seetal discovered the vision of Jindal Global Law School long before the world discovered us. And we are eternally grateful to her for her encouragement and support and inspiration that led to the very foundations of the building of Jindal Global Law School, including its program. And she has mentored many of our faculty members. And we are very, very grateful to her for her kind presence. Let me introduce Professor Dr. Sheetal Ranjan. Professor Sheetal Ranjan is a professor and graduate director in the Department of Sociology and Criminal Justice at the William Patterson University, US. Her research interests include violence prevention and intervention with a primary focus on applied research. She has received federal funding from the Department of Justice, Office on Violence Against Women, over $600,000 to establish the William Patterson University's Campus Violence Prevention Program. Her most recent award in partnership with Jersey Shore University Medical Center, which was a $2.5 million grant, uses Federal Victims of Crime Act funding to establish a hospital-based violence intervention program. Her teaching interests include research methods, statistics, geographic information systems. It includes crime mapping, violence in the community, domestic violence, victimology, and juvenile delinquency. She is an enthusiastic user of technology in pedagogy and believes that students should be equipped with the technological skills necessary to enhance performance in any sphere of life. Sheetal Ranjan currently serves on the policy committee of the American Society of Criminology and is a board member of the Crime and Justice Research Alliance, which is a centralized resource of authoritative experts and scholarly studies created to provide policymakers, practitioners, and the public direct access to relevant research on crime and criminal justice system. I want to personally thank Professor Sheetal Ranjan for not only agreeing to be part of today's program, but she has volunteered her support to the development of the BA Honors in Criminology and Criminal Justice, and we look forward to hosting her on campus sooner than later. Let me take this moment to invite and welcome Ms. Sushma Raman, who will be joining us shortly. Sushma Raman is the Executive Director of the Carr Center for Human Rights Policy. She brings over 2 decades of global experience launching, scaling, and leading social justice and philanthropic programs and collaborations, including building capacities of grassroots human rights organizations and their leaders, and teaching graduate courses in the public policy schools at UCLA, USC, Tufts at the Fletcher School, and Harvard Kennedy School. Sushma is the co-author, along with Bill Schultz, former Executive Director of Amnesty International US and the Carr Center Senior Fellow, of the book, The Coming Good Society, Why New Realities Demand New Rights, released by Harvard University Press in June 2020. The forward-looking book examines the coming changes to the human rights landscape and argues that rights must adapt to new technological and scientific realities or risk being consigned to irrelevance. Sushma is the host of the Carr Center Justice Matters podcast, a contributor to Foreign Policy magazine, and a senior advisor to Walbrook, a global intelligence, due diligence, and risk advisory firm. Sushma has worked at the Ford Foundation, where she managed a $100 million global program, the second largest in the foundation's history at that time, where she helped launch and scale social justice and women's funds around the world, and at the Open Society Foundation, where she was the program officer on the founding staff for US programs, staffing a $50 million fund established by philanthropist George Soros to support immigrant and refugee rights. Ms. Sushma Raman has been part of our effort to create programs within Harvard University, and she has spoken at our Harvard program on human rights and development, and we had the opportunity to host her there. We look forward to her visit to our campus and be part of the effort to launch the BA Honors in Human Rights program. With those words, let me congratulate all my colleagues and others who have led the creation of the program, and I sincerely hope a number of bright students from India and around the world make a decision to join this program within the Jindal Global Law School and OP Jindal Global University. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for being our guiding light. It is indeed an honor to learn from you and to learn under your guidance. I now invite Professor Dr. S.G. Srijay, Professor of Law and Executive Dean, Jindal Global Law School, to introduce the 3 UG programs. Professor, may I request you to introduce the programs?
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening at whatever time zone you're in. This moment, the launch of the 3 undergraduate degree programs, BA Honors in Human Rights, BA Honors in Gender Studies, and BA Honors in Criminology and Criminal Justice, is special for Jindal Global Law School, as this is a moment which helps the school actualize its commitment to uphold interdisciplinarity and multidisciplinarity, the much needed way of approaching and internalizing knowledge in a post-global society. The three programs are launched together, but there is some commonality between the three. There are also differences and uniqueness. What is common about the three programs? First, it is the context in which they are introduced. Over the last 12 years of its journey, Jindal Global Law School has had its goals set to provide highest quality legal education, which we did through our 5-year program and our 3-year programs. In 2020, we went on to become the first law school in India to offer a BA Honors in Legal Studies, a program which aims to provide knowledge of the context in which law functions and knowledge of the frameworks within which legal decisions are made. At this point in history, we, a private university which has been promoting public service, are onto larger causes. The subject matter of these programs, human rights, gender, criminology, and criminal justice, are foundational to any egalitarian society. Respect for human rights, gender equality in thought and action, and a robust law and order system are pivotal to fair and just societies which we have been envisioning. The three programs thus come under a common motivation to help build fair and just societies. Second, while education in human rights, gender, and criminology exists at various levels, by bringing it under focused degree programs, Jindal Global Law School aims to bring in the values of higher education, particularly the values OP Jindal Global University as a higher educational institution has been upholding. This gives a new approach and perspective to education in human rights, gender, and criminology. This value orientation will fetch outcomes which will be socially constructive. Third, all the three programs have strong clinical elements. Through human rights clinic, gender clinics, and criminology clinics, we aim to provide participative and experiential learning, which would help students develop a sense of community. The sense of community is not just knowledge of the context in which social functions are carried out, but also knowledge of the lived experience of the people therein and the ability to become part of their lives. The skill development which these programs aim happen on the said empathy. That being the commonalities, broadly, each program is unique in its philosophy and pedagogical approaches. The human rights program is rights-based. Its discourses aim to integrate the political and the legal, and it sets the current socio-political realities as a context. Its pedagogy aims at empowering students through knowledge of rights, at providing skills to perform human rights in a professional way, and at generating a sense of empathy and belonging. The gender studies program is structured on 3 E's: elementary knowledge, enabling knowledge, and extended knowledge. As part of imparting elementary knowledge, the program aims to teach the epistemology of gender studies, especially the subject and the subject matters. As part of providing enabling knowledge, the program aims to provide information on the many constellations and connections, gender and other things. For example, a focus on intersectionality, regimes of gender, and role of gender in social and cultural production. As part of providing extended knowledge, the program aims at gender outreach and building the perspective of gender futurism through courses like artificial intelligence and gender equality and gender and anthropocene. The criminology and criminal justice program has a layered approach: foundational knowledge on society, its criminal justice system and socio-political conditions, essential knowledge on the multidisciplinary connections of criminology, systemic knowledge on the workings of various systems and processes, and skill-based knowledge for imparting essential criminological skills. To realize the best potential of these programs and to obtain the most constructive outcomes out of them, we have been imaginative and innovative with the design of the program. A few representative examples are in order. The course, Field Work and Reporting in Human Rights program, will help students escape the trap of an a priori understanding of human condition and the application of rights thereof. The course, Gender Reading Groups, offered under the Gender Studies program, which has the concept of an empty basket, which will be filled up by the course instructor with relevant readings. The 3 reading groups are offered at the end of a preconceived level and are offered thrice during the program. The open reading groups will help overcome the formality of discourses, which at times disciplines tend to impose irrespective of their openly professed openness. The course Criminological Counseling in the Criminology and Criminal Justice program gives a laboratory approach to things, which instills a sense of scientific objectivity and confidence of testability of claims and propositions in the minds of students. The carefully planned and designed internship routes, the opportunities to collaborate and connect through the many international collaborations exclusive to these programs, and the many curricular and co-curricular activities, generally at JGLS and particularly for these programs, will provide students a broadening learning experience. I proudly submit these programs to the student community in India. I'm certain that whatever thought has gone into the designing of these programs will be given finest curricular form and substance by my wonderful colleagues at Jindal Global Law School who will be teaching these programs. In great hope, high anticipation, boundless joy, and tremendous pride, I stop here to start again tomorrow for similar and larger things with JGU. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor, for expanding on the scope of these programs. And I'm sure this will motivate and encourage a lot of students to join and enroll for these programs. On that note, I would like all of you to join us for the virtual unveiling of the brochures of these three programs. I request the IT department to play the video wherein we will unveil the brochures. Thank you all for joining us in the unveiling of the brochures of what we can tell three very exciting degree programs. To deliver the special address for today and launch our first degree program, that is BA Honours Gender Studies, I invite Professor Seetal Kalantri, Associate Professor of Law, School of Law, Seattle University, USA, to please deliver the address. Professor, may I request you to please deliver the address today?
Sure. Thank you so much, Tripti, for the introduction. And thank you always, Rajkumar, for your generous introduction. And good morning from Seattle. I might be the earliest riser here. It's 6:30 a.m. and there's a lot happening for me today, but I wanted to be here to celebrate this important moment with Jindal Global Law School. Led by the vision of Rajkumar, Jindal Global University has revolutionized education in India. And as he mentioned, I've been part of that journey, so I can tell you that I've witnessed it over the last 12 years, the change in education because of Jindal. And he has done so with incredible colleagues, including many of whom are on this program, Professor Deepika Jain and Professor Indeen Srijit, who have worked hard to build one of the best law schools in India. And they're trying to build the best law school in the world. Who knows, they may soon succeed. And I'm happy to share this panel with Professors Ranjan and Raman. So this new degree specializations are just another example of JGU's continued innovations. Despite everything that they have already achieved, JG continues to revolutionize and innovate rather than rest on its accomplishments. Each of these degrees are very important both to society but also to fulfilling the JGU's institutional commitments to justice. And some might wonder, well, particularly if you're thinking about this degree, or if there's students out there, you might be thinking, well, why do we need a degree focused on gender? Especially at a law school in India. Today in India, we have, in most law schools, at least certainly in Jindal, over 50% or more law students are women. Many graduate and obtain jobs, at least I know in US law schools. As an example, using Cornell, where I taught for 15 years, we look at our data and women are getting the same jobs at the same prestigious places as their male colleagues. Even in India, a recent study suggested that women in Indian corporate law firms are faring better than prior generations of lawyers at non-corporate firms. Today, there are a record of 4 women at the Indian Supreme Court. And also, unlike the United States, India has had a female head of state. Indeed, all of your neighbors in South Asia have had a female head of state. This, however, as you can all imagine, is surface level equality. While women are entering and getting seats at law schools in the United States as equal numbers as men, when they go to the workforce, they don't achieve the same level of success. This is what some call the glass ceiling, because it prevents women from moving up. But this idea now has simply, the idea is that you can simply shatter the glass and move up the ladder. But now this is being called a concrete ceiling, right? Which is that it's not as easy to shatter as one would have believed. Indeed, I've looked at law firms in the United States, and in the large law firms, the number of women equity partners is 25% today. And that's not equal, but what's more troubling is that that is not increased in the last 25 years. So there's been a stagnation. Improvements are made at the entry level, but then at higher levels, there's lack of growth. In India, there's only one woman, I think, who's CEO of a top 50 company. And while many are hailing the number 4 women that there are 4 women at the Indian Supreme Court, let's keep in mind that there's 34 sanctioned strength of judges. And more shockingly, in the 70-year history of the court, only 11 women out of the nearly 250 judges, 11 of whom were women. So in this context, women are simply tokens, and there needs to be proportional representation in the Supreme Court, in the lower courts, in the higher courts, as well as parliament, governments, as well as private employers, which Jindal, I think, takes really great pride in ensuring that its faculty and staff are proportionally reflected. In an empirical study I conducted with co-authors, we found that while the Indian Supreme Court has throughout its history, it hasn't so much been concerned about gender representation, it has been concerned about regional and religious diversity, but fails to focus on gender. And there's no excuse for this, especially in the last many years when women are entering, the pipeline problem is not there. Women are entering in legal professional in equal numbers. And in our study, we also found that women who are nominated to the Supreme Court by the Collegium are more likely to have been chief justices of 2 high courts, as opposed to men who are nominated as judges, reinforcing the idea that women have to work harder to achieve the same levels of success. Beyond sexism of those who have the power to promote women, there are also structural and social barriers women face to achieving success. Girls in some families may not be given the same resources, may be expected to fulfill certain roles that do not allow them to live their full potential. They navigate a world where they must fear for their personal safety in ways that boys and men do not. I've interviewed women in my work in India who became blind and their faces burned simply for rejecting a man who they didn't want to marry. Poor women I've interviewed women who are surrogates, who are asked to sign contracts by doctors, and they don't even know how to read. And these contracts are in English. So there's private forms of problems and discrimination. Sexual violence against women is often not taken seriously by police and courts. I've seen the homes of many people destroyed who live in slum communities. It is for this reason and many other reasons that we need students to study gender studies and further understand these problems so that you can create solutions to them. Law has the power to address many issues, but not all of these inequalities. There needs to be a multi-pronged and multidisciplinary approach, which is exactly what this program envisions. It envisions drawing from other disciplines, drawing for women's studies, and combining it with law and legal studies. Both in India and the United States, many inspiring women lawyers have used law as a tool for social change. In the United States, a notable example is Justice Ginsburg, who used litigation to strike down laws that denied formal equality to women. She challenged laws where women weren't allowed to do basic things like obtain certain jobs or were prohibited from doing other things as men. In India, lawyers such as Indrajit Singh, Flavia Agnes have successfully also used litigation as a tool to promote women's rights and challenge structural and strategic, using strategic methods to challenge structural inequality. But we recognize that just because laws are not biased, it doesn't mean that the reality will follow suit, right? This is exactly why, as Srijit and Raj has mentioned, that law cannot be the only tool. We need to also look and draw from the social sciences, which this degree program intends to combine social science perspectives with legal tools. Equal laws are necessary, but not sufficient for a just society. Women and girls must also have equality of access to education, be free from violence, and be given equal resources in families. It'll be the job of students who use the lens of gender studies to identify and solve barriers for women and girls in India, and indeed around the world. That will not be easy to solve. People have been trying to do that for decades, but we've made progress, but yet it's still up to you to continue the goals that have been started. And understanding these problems will not be simple either. Let's keep in mind that the lens that you use should be very complicated. It should understand that women come from many different social classes, from different caste backgrounds. They have other identities that shape the challenges they face in society. And often many students may not really even be from these personal backgrounds that they need to address. So this is where the experiential learning comes in, where it's very hard for people to understand and be in other people's shoes unless they've talked to the people, unless they've been out there, unless they've seen it for their own eyes. And I'm so happy that there is an experiential learning part of this, or a clinical part of this, where you work with people from other communities so that you can gain empathy from them and also develop the proper policies and laws in ways that you think can empower them as well as represent them. Other challenges that you will face is that even people who want to fight for gender equality don't really agree on what equality means, right? Not everyone agrees on what they see as the problems. Feminists strongly disagree about whether a woman should be allowed to act as a reproductive surrogate for other people. Is that liberation or is that oppression? There are opinions on both sides. Once we look transnationally, which we have to do in this world, the disagreements become even more complicated. Some feminists strongly believe that women should have the right to choose. And this means even the right to decide that they want to have only sons, or at least one son and not a daughter. Others strongly disagree. In my work, I've tried to tackle these issues and reconcile them and understand the context within which they arise in both India and the United States and transnationally. The problems you will tackle will be hard and require a lot of research and thought. And these questions today cannot be answered without looking globally. And this is why Jindal Global Law School is the perfect setting to launch this degree program because of its global focus. We've seen the Me Too movement is an example of the transnationalization of feminist ideas and legal solutions, gaining momentum through social media in the United States. The movement against sexual assault and sexual harassment migrated around the world. Even in India, women felt empowered to speak out against sexual harassment they faced in the workplace. In some cases, they achieved justice. In other cases, they did not. The interchange of feminist legal theories and ideas among transnational civil society, lawyers, judges, and legislative representatives can be very fruitful. Judges borrow solutions that were successful in achieving women's equality from other countries. Feminist lawyers in one country can seek information from other countries in addressing domestic legal concerns. In doing all of this, it's important to keep in mind the importance of contextualizing and understanding practices and solutions within the social, historical, and economic context in which they emerge. We have all made progress, but there is still a long way to go for women's equality. Then there are also new questions and challenges that are unearthing even the concept of gender. Some argue that we can no longer say pregnant people because transgender and non-binary people who identify as women can also get pregnant and deliver babies. These are challenging questions that a new gender studies program and women who are focusing on gender studies and men, and I do hope that we can't solve this problem without men also join this program. The pandemic has uprooted our lives, our norms, and our assumptions about what was possible and what was not possible. We wouldn't imagine that this international launch would have been possible. We couldn't imagine that we could sit home and accomplish so much. We couldn't imagine that we would have to wear masks. I'm wearing masks while I'm teaching in person this year, as well as my students. But women have been disproportionately impacted. In some societies, they've left jobs to care for children. They've dropped out of school at a disproportionate rate. They've faced increasing violence at home. And so I hope you all, the students who join this program, take the opportunity to reimagine a post-pandemic world that we can rebuild that's equal for all people. And I think that this we have an opportunity to reset the baseline. And I have very great ambitions and very great hope that this program will achieve its goals of helping address justice and improve equality for all people, particularly women. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Seetal, for a fascinating, address, and I really appreciate the kind of chords that you touched when it comes to the curriculum and the course structure, and indeed the vision that has informed the process of launch of this program. We sincerely hope that we will have you sooner than later on campus, on our campus. So wish you the very best. I know it's a very special day today, and I can of course share this with our friends and colleagues here. We have a very strong partnership with the university you are working. Professor Seetal Kalantri's partner and husband, Professor Eduardo Penalver, who used to be the Dean of the Cornell Law School, has just become the president of the Seattle University. And today is his inauguration as the president of the Seattle University. But even then, Seetal had accepted our invitation and chosen to be here. So I'm grateful to you, Seetal, for your presence. And I know you need to leave. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. Thank you for educating us about the need for studying this subject in a structured manner. And thank you for being here with us. On this note, I would like to take this opportunity to invite our distinguished guest speaker, Professor Dr. Sheetal Ranjan, Professor and Graduate Director, Department of Sociology and Criminal Justice, William Paterson University, USA, to launch the BA Honors Criminology and Criminal Justice program with her address. Professor, the floor is for you.
Triti, just 1 minute. I want to recognize the presence of Ms. Sushma Raman. from the Carr Center for Human Rights Policy at Harvard Kennedy School. Thank you very much, Sushma, for joining us. Please, Sheetal, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, Tripti, and thank you, Raj, for the wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it. I imagine a lot of, 12th grade students are going to be watching this. So you folks, I'm talking to you, not to the professors here, not to the deans here, not to the distinguished folks. I really care about what you are going to do tomorrow. So I'm going to speak just to you. So the others, please excuse me if I don't come across pedantic and I come across more conversational to folks who I care a lot about and who I care to mentor a lot. So let me begin by, you're at the crossroads of your life and you are thinking, okay, what is it that I'm going to do? And I want to, bring in two personal stories that weave in my life and what shaped my decisions in my life. And so I'll bring that out. I come from a family where I'm a third general social justice activist. My grandfather was a barrister who was educated, at the same time as Indira Gandhi and Feroz Gandhi back in, the day in England. And he came and was part of the freedom struggle. My mother fought for women's rights in India and she was a lawyer. So two of them coming from law. How did I end up with criminology, right? So that was the crossroads where I made the decision. Do I want to pursue a law degree or do I want to pursue a criminal justice degree, criminology degree in India? It was very new. I read a little ad in the newspaper about an MA program created by Raj's dad. So this is the second story where our lives have intertwined. It was a master's in criminology in a tiny little ad in the Hindu newspaper in Chennai. And here I am thinking a law degree is not going to make me enough of a social justice activist. I will not be able to live up and be as proud, make my grandfather and my mother as proud as I can if I did something different. So with that in mind, and of course, the other thing is like my mother worked super hard as a lawyer. And so seeing her lifestyle, I said, you know what, I want to do criminology. It sounds cool. It sounds interesting. At that point, those were the factors, but it sounds like I can do psychology, which I want to do. I can do sociology. I can learn about crimes and criminals, and I can study about gender. It seems so exciting. And of course, I landed up in the office of the father of Dr. Rajkumar here, Dr. Chakalingam. I don't know exactly, but I haven't asked him, I should have, but I think he is the founder of I think he's the father of criminology in India. So I'm very excited about that. And it was funny because I moved to the US to pursue my PhD while Raj went on to, create Jindal Global University in India. And we pursued our separate paths for the past 1.5 decades. And in that time, right now in moment in time, his dad insisted with Raj that, he and I connected, insisted me that he and I connect. And I didn't want to bother someone as busy as Raj. And I think then he realized she's not going to do her part. So I'm going to, insist. So that's how we connected. And that's why I'm here today. But that said, I chose a master's in criminology. And I created the bachelor's in criminology and criminal justice program at William Patterson University. So I want to speak directly to that. So before I even, agreed to do this, or rather after I agreed to do this, in this case, I sent a list of series of questions to Dr. Rajkumar. Okay, so what about this program? Does this have this? Does this have that? Does it have a study abroad? Does it have an internship? Does it have an intersection of disciplines? And every question was answered by Srijit, I forget your title. I think you're dean or executive dean, whatever it is. I'm sorry, I can't recall that. But every question was answered like it brought so much joy to me that this is exactly what is happening. This is exactly what is needed in India. And it is time for a solid, high quality bachelor's program in criminology and criminal justice. A master's at this point just won't cut it. You lose a lot of precious time. And so I'm super, super excited about this program. Let me tell you, I'm using the lingo you guys use, students. Why? Because you understand just that. So let me talk about what is exciting about this program to me, okay? One, foundational knowledge, which is very critical, because when you start out learning the foundational knowledge of criminology at the intersection of, psychology, sociology, law, criminal justice, applied nature, and everything at a very early age, your clarity of mind is very clear, is perfect. Because whereas when you do it at an MA level, it's kind of like, you're trying to rebuild from whatever you previously learned. So missing out that important piece of learning, I think that is covered by doing a bachelor's and with the foundational knowledge. Then, of course, there's the essential knowledge, which is about, what's happening in the country right now. Like, we have a course called Essentials of Criminal Justice over here, which you have in the program, which covers all the aspects of the legal and the criminal justice system. So you have that. Then you have the systemic knowledge about how these systems and processes work. Let me tell you, with all my grants, with all my applied work, that's exactly what decides how things happen. That's the place at which things actually make a difference. There is change when systems and processes work efficiently. Because in principle, people are able to create the best of laws, put them in legislation. The legislature may approve it, but then what happens to that law? How does it get implemented? What is happening in the daily lives of people who need to use that law? What happens to, our criminal justice professionals when they interpret that law and use it in a prosecutorial way? That's the stuff that makes or breaks the justice system. And I think I'm very happy that you have that integrated in the program. And then, of course, most important is, without practice in the field, there is no meaning to what you're learning. And I think I see such a strong focus on that I'm super, super thrilled about that. Okay. So let me come to, my journey in India and the master's program. I was sitting, I mean, it was applied, it was many things. And I have to say, I have to give credit to people who created that program and tried to implement it at the time. I'm talking about the 1990. Okay, 1990, 1991. At that time, to envision what is needed and to create the different ways in which this program will operate. On one day, I was sitting in a classroom at the police training college with a member who is now going to be who is already now in your faculty, Dr. R.K. Raghavan. He turned out to be the CBI director. He's such vast experience. He's been an investigator of crimes. He's going to teach that course. But I was sitting in his classroom at a police training college doing that. And another day, I was at the General Hospital in Chennai, where I am witnessing a postmortem. And those images, that learning, that intersection of disciplines, that intersection of, knowledge has made me who I am today and made me as successful and brought me as far as I have. Why am I doing a hospital-based violence intervention program grant today? And why am I pursuing that kind of programming? Because I've seen it, witnessed it. I have understood it. And I have to tell you, those visions, those moments have changed my life. I could remember each of those classes way better, with clarity and distinction in my memory, than I could remember my entire PhD at one of the top schools, John Jay College of Criminal Justice, where I've done my PhD in criminology and criminal justice. I mean, I can remember my time in India more vividly, in greater detail, than I did over here. But of course, what I did learn over here is invaluable. The associations I have made at the criminology and criminal justice program at John Jay are tremendously invaluable. So I don't mean to undercut that. But what made me who I am and pursue this degree and take this further along and decide to not only become a professional and a professor in it, but want to bring it back to all of you, is just those visions which I had as a young, person in India going through my master's. So, I want you folks to think, what is it you want to do in life? I know many of you have a social justice orientation, and many of you, and knowing India and knowing just the way, all parents in India, I know you're going to be pushed in one direction or the other. I would say, listen to your heart. Listen to your heart, pursue what you love, and do it to the best of your ability and do it well. Success will come to you. There is no doubt about that. Success will just come to you. If you happen to go to Jindal Global University, I know they've made everything possible to make you the most successful person that you can ever be, regardless of what field you choose. So don't have to worry too much about it. And parents, if you're out there listening to this video with those students, let them do their thing. They are going to be successful. The world has changed. It's no longer just those, limited degrees which get you the professions that you want. Not only does India need this range of degrees and this social justice orientation, it's the whole world needs it. So I call on you to, help your, offspring decide what is best for them. So I want to speak to that. And then let me come to, the program itself. I got this program list, and let me talk about some of the, I'm so excited that the program has an international focus. In semester B of the first year, you're taking international criminal law. You know what? I had to teach myself that thing, international criminal law. How does it work? I was fortunate while I was in the MA program in India that we had people from the criminal court of the International Criminal Court visit us and give a lecture. That sparked my imagination about that this thing is important. That has carried forward in my work with the United Nations, with the CSW, the Commission for Status of Women, and the other things that I organized. That has carried forward. The fact that we can change policy, that has made me relentlessly pursue my programming and policy interests, to have a seat on the table. I would be remiss in saying that I might be one of the few Indians to have made it to the policy committee of the American Society of Criminology. Why? Because I chose to be there, because I want to push on those issues. We have done work on translating work in the field into policy, into programs that will change the lives of people. So it comes back to the promise of what I wanted to be as a young person. And I think that's what you need to ask yourself. Who do you see yourself 20 years from now? Who do you want to be? And ask yourself that question, then choose the degree. You have 3 offerings here. You have the law program. You can also do the law after this. And that is identified in the pathways. When you look at the brochure, it will show you that it is one of the pathways you can take. But if you chose to do research, well, pursue that pathway. And I am sure JGU will relentlessly pursue the best partnerships across the, not just, the United States, across the world. And I am willing to be a, happy partner with them to facilitate those things and make those things work out, because I care about the students back home in India. I was one of you, and to this day, wherever in the world I go, I remain one of you. So, I think I've covered most of the points, Raj and Srijit. I'm going to end it there. I don't want to, delve furthermore, but folks, feel free to reach out to me if you have questions about the program itself. I can tell you from my perspective that this is super exciting. And I'm looking forward to coming to the campus and meeting this first cohort of students who will have an opportunity to interact with each other, with, with your colleagues from a human rights degree, with your colleagues from a gender studies degree, and with your, colleagues from a law degree. I can't imagine the student center where these 4 disciplines sit together and talk and hash out the new India. So I'm looking forward to meeting all of you. Hey, if you're one of them who's going to be at this university, who is fortunate enough to be selected, who's worked hard enough to make it here, I'm looking forward to seeing you and to learning about you and to knowing you better. Thank you, Raj. Thank you, Srijit. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Sheetal. What an extraordinary tour de force and a truly remarkably inspiring journey. All of us are inspired by your story, but more importantly, I'm sure the students who heard were deeply inspired by it. So thank you very much. And I'm so grateful to you that you said we will build this partnership and collaboration. Very soon you will hear from us, and we want to do many more things together so that we use this 1 year till we bring the first cohort of our students on 1st of August 2022 to be able to create opportunities and programs for them as we prepare to welcome the inaugural batch of our students. So thank you very much, Sheetal, for a fascinating special address.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for being so candid and sharing some anecdotes. This has definitely pepped us all up about the course. I am so excited that I will probably request my senior colleagues to allow me to take some modules, audit some modules from this course, definitely. So for now, the launch of the 3rd degree program, BA Honors in Human Rights, I invite our distinguished guest, Ms. Sushma Raman, Executive Director, Carr Center for Human Rights Policy, Harvard Kennedy School, Harvard University, USA, to deliver her address. Professor, the floor is for you.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone at Jindal for inviting me. I feel like we're old friends, even though I have not seen some of you since the pandemic. So thank you for the invitation. And it's a bit daunting, to be honest, to follow our 2 distinguished speakers. I don't know if it's better to go first or last in this case, but I'm honored to be here and to welcome all of you and to say that the topic of human rights is critical around the world, especially in India. And anything that you can do to advance these issues in your own way is very, very important. So I'm going to talk informally, and I hope that this conversation continues over time. The materials that was sent to me say right at the start that respect for human rights is an essential characteristic of just societies. And I was so struck by that, because as we think about how to make our societies more just, more inclusive, more prosperous, more sustainable, thinking about human rights is one integral component for that effort. And so even though human rights have long been a language for emancipation, for empowerment, for mobilization, they are increasingly under attack around the world. Now, we see these attacks coming from authoritarians, but we also see these attacks occurring in democracies, liberal and illiberal alike, and countries experiencing democratic backsliding. And we see this in the closing civic space that has been occurring with respect to attacks on freedom of expression, assembly, and association. The pandemic has only accelerated this, where many countries around the world, using the pandemic as an excuse, have cracked down on social movements, human rights organizations, environmental defenders, anti-corruption advocates, and so on. Another trend that is concerning is the use of surveillance technologies to surveil individuals, but also the commodification of our data by large companies that is now resulting in incredible profits for the few at the expense of the many. Human rights also is concerned with matters of economic inequality and injustice, which then affects the abilities of individuals and communities to attain a range of rights. So it is really incumbent upon us, now that we've celebrated or commemorated 70 plus years of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, seen the development of a robust set of organizations and movements around the world. And I would say that India is really, epicenter for amazing, innovative social movements, civil society organizations. And so now, as we look forward, we have to think about how are human rights relevant today, and how can we make them even more impactful, and how can we sustain these efforts? So I recently co-authored a book called The Coming Good Society, Why New Realities Demand New Rights. And in that, my co-author, Bill Schultz, who's the former head of Amnesty International USA, and I talk about the fact that we believe that rights are not static and permanent, even though they evolved out of a specific context 70 plus years ago. We really need to reassess that context today, with the rise of migration, with the rise of sophisticated technologies and advancements in the biosciences, with the issues of grand and petty corruption that affect the ability of individuals to realize their rights. So how do we look forward to a future that is more just? So I believe that the human rights movement and organizations and leaders need to find ways to be more strategic, to deploy long-term thinking in addition to responding to immediate crises of the day. We need to embrace the issues at the frontiers and not just narrow notions. Many people I know, in fact, pushed back and said, no, we need to focus on core rights. We should get rid of, genocide and have accountability for war crimes before we look at issues like gender and LGBT rights. And so we had to really push back on this notion that rights are the zero-sum game. I think we can try and ensure a world that is peaceful and conflict-free, but also respecting the rights of marginalized communities. We need to think of new frames and narratives. Many of us who are interested in issues of social justice and human rights might have family members or friends who are skeptical or antagonistic. So how do we speak about these stories and issues in ways that compel others and bring people to the table? And I think that the work that Jindal is doing in this space and the model that has been developed is really, really important and compelling. So thinking about rights within this context of the political and legal frameworks in terms of the contemporary realities, looking at not just knowledge, but also skills, and emphasizing participatory learning. I think these are all really, really important ways to think about how do you build your body of knowledge and your skill sets as you go into the world. And I think in closing, I would say, and this is a bit strange coming from being in an academic setting right now, but a lot of the things I have learned have really been in the field, listening to people who are closest to the problems. So as you think about your education and go forth, realize that education in the formal setting is just one aspect of one's learning, that often learning happens on the ground when listening and taking the lead from others who perhaps we might otherwise think of as not educated, but really they are closest to the challenges, to the problems, and often have the most innovative solutions. I will also say at a law school that the law does not always equal justice. The law has often been used against people to hold people back. So really thinking about, as you strive for a future, thinking about how to use the law to advance justice and to advance equity. So I'll stop there and turn it back to you. Thank you so much, Raj Kumar and others, for inviting me today.
Thank you, Sushma, for a fascinating address. And I know that you drew so much out of your own lived experiences of working in so many organizations. In fact, one of the things that we are very conscious of in doing this is that most lawyers and law students who end up studying human rights have a very far more limited approach towards human rights in relation to its all its forms and manifestations, but more also, they also draw their foundations from law. And one of the things I've learned, and I didn't work as long as you did in the field of human rights, but my own academic work, but also having worked in organizations such as the National Human Rights Commission, when it was really, something that was, important and influential. I realized that there are so many other perspectives to the study of human rights that need not draw its sole origins from law itself. And today, as we look at the impact of human rights advocacy that transcends law, there is a need for developing a much broader and a more interdisciplinary perspective towards human rights. So our goal is to integrate both the theory and the jurisprudence and also the philosophical foundations of human rights, along with the practice issues relating to advocacy, working of non-governmental organizations, including think tanks and civil society organizations, intergovernmental organizations, media. All these aspects need to be brought to bear in the study of human rights. And so we hope that the BA Honors in Human Rights program fulfills that appetite and aspiration for a lot of students who intend to do that. And the awareness related to human rights studies has actually, dominated a number of high school education, aspirants. And I think this program will potentially fill a very important gap that is needed, that is prevailing in Indian academia. So I appreciate the fact that you brought some of those perspectives into your speech, and thank you very much for your very presence here. Over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for enlightening us about what a human right leader or an activist or an advocate needs to look at. I remember when I was in my first year of law school, when people asked me what you wanted to be, I always used to tell that I want to be a human rights lawyer. But then when I was asked, what is human rights? I was speechless. And since then, it has been a learning process. It's something that finds significance in every aspect, like Professor Rajkumar pointed out. Well, on that note, I would now like to invite Professor Deepika Jain, Vice Dean for Research, Jindal Global Law School, for her concluding remarks.
Thank you, Trupti, and hello, everyone. Thank you, Professor Kalantri, Professor Ranjan, and Professor Raman for your very inspiring address. Congratulations to JGU for the launch of 3 wonderful undergrad programs. As someone who completed a 3+3 law degree in India, I'm really excited about the launch of these undergraduate programs. These degrees have been designed in a way that they are specialized, yet they are interdisciplinary and contemporary. Legal education has been characterized as both professional and liberal in nature. The ultimate mission of legal education is arguably to transform law students into socially sensitive, justice-oriented legal professionals. Duncan Kennedy, a professor in the United States, also the founding member of critical legal studies movement, in his very profound essay in 1984 argued that law schools ordinarily distance its students from engaging with concerns of social justice or committing themselves towards responsibilities anchored on social change. Not surprisingly, in India, neither of these 3 subjects, gender studies or law and gender, criminology and human rights, are compulsory subjects in law schools. So Duncan Kennedy suggested that to organize a resistance against classroom biases, we should establish a curriculum that's politically sensitive, both in forms of critical engagements and clinical programs that practice utopian thinking, not merely as pursuit of ideal futures, but to examine and reveal hidden ideological presumptions of institutions and then demand accountability. Now, for example, gender studies is an academic discipline with a lot of contemporary relevance. We heard a lot about gender studies from Professor Kalantri. There are several new and emerging research centers, NGOs, policy think tanks working on gender around the globe. New journals, blogs testify to the profound impact of the knowledge produced within this discipline. There is no doubt that there is need for growing expertise in this field and socially conscious global citizens. We're also living in a world in times where there is considerable pushback on gender, sexuality, and feminism. For example, the recent intolerance around abortion rights in many parts of the world, or LGBT rights in some other parts of the world. So gender, criminology, and human rights occupy very central presence in courtrooms, parliament, corporates, other institutions, and social spaces. Postgraduate programs in gender studies, criminology, and human rights are common. But introduction of these disciplines within an undergraduate format is both exciting and inviting, and I look forward to seeing the students in this program thrive in a critical, reflective environment where they can both learn and unlearn in a romantic, collaborative way beyond the mechanical aspects of vocational training on our wonderful campus with our exciting faculty. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Jain, for your concluding remarks. I now request Professor Anand Prakash Mishra, Director of Law Admissions, OP Jindal Global University, Associate Dean, Jindal Global Law School, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you so much, Professor Tripti. My first thanks to you for anchoring this program. But more, I will say most importantly, Professor Sheetal Kalantri, Professor Sheetal Ranjan, and Professor Shushma, who joined us from different time zones, some of you as early as 6:30 a.m. in the morning. My all thanks and gratitude to you for taking all the pain for this pure academic initiative and giving those wonderful lectures to give a great start, a great beginning to this program, which actually going to start in 2022. But this inaugural lectures of yours will go a long way in the history of these academic programs at Jindal Global Law School. Secondly, I must thank Professor Dr. C. Rajkumar for the idea, for the encouragement, and Professor Dr. Srijit for being the architect of these three programs in terms of designing the curriculum and spending a lot of time in getting the programs what they are today. I'm also thankful to Professor Deepika Jain, to our all other colleagues who are involved in developing these three programs. And I must say, being the product of same academic tradition of 3+3, doing an undergrad and then doing a 3-year LLB program, these programs were actually essential for the law schools in the country. I wonder why no law school ever thought to offer an academic degree other than law in the law school setup. It's only when you think about law school, it is an LLB or a BA LLB, a 5-year or 3-year law degree. But human rights, gender studies, criminology, and certainly there are few more areas like this which should be taught in the law schools. And I'm extremely delighted that Professor Dr. C. Rajkumar brought that vision to teach 3-year undergraduate degree programs in Jindal Global Law School way back in 2019. And again, we are offering these 3 undergraduate programs from the next academic year. Thirdly, my thanks to all the audience who are part of this lecture, those who are attending it on YouTube and Facebook accounts of the official OP Jindal Global University channels. And last but not the least, the Office of Registrar, the Office of Information Technology, our IT team members who have organized this webinar, the graphic designers who have worked on preparing those brochures and the nice video, and every team members, whether of the Office of Vice Chancellor, Office of Registrar, the Executive Dean Office, or the Office of Admissions and Outreach. I thank each one of them for making the successful inauguration of our 3 amazing, first of its kind undergraduate degree honors program in India and at Jindal Global Law School and OP Jindal Global University. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Mishra. With this, we come to an end of this ceremony. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Have a great weekend ahead. Namaskar.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sheetal and Sushma and
Thank you.
Sheetal Kalantri for your presence. Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks. Bye.